Okay, welcome to Nested Loops. Wrap up the last chapter, and we got Alex. Let's do that. And we'll switch.
Okay, can you guys do the full version?
Yeah.
Yep, I like the Carla font.
Yeah, I gotta use the Carla font. Okay, so making badass, making users awesome. This is the last chapter called Escape the Brain's Spam Filter. Okay, and you guys see this next one with the spider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's track along. Okay, cool. This chapter is all about escaping the spam filter of our brain. So how do we do that, right? So we need to help our users' brains agree, right? So, the question really is what do brains care about, right? So we need to help them, we want our product to be something that they care about. We want our product to be something that they pay attention to. We want our product to be something that they remember. So if focus is required but difficult, we have to help the user convince their brain. So, we mix together the action of what our user wants to complete with something that the user's brain cares about. So what do brains care about? Good question. So, in the book they posit that brains care about faces, people showing strong emotions. Brains care about young things like babies and puppies. They care about feelings, right, and what caused them. So, if you find something funny, your brain might not even know what's funny, but they'll still send what you think is funny through the spam filter, right? So pretty much they care about any emotional response enough to send it through the spam filter. And they also, anything odd or unexpected, right? So you can see here on this photo on the right side that we have a monk with a laptop and a squirrel with a camera and a guy being pulled by some small dog. I don't know what kind of dog that is, but a dog that does not look big enough to pull him. And that's odd, right? So that's something my brain pays attention to, right? Because it's unexpected, and anything that needs resolution, right? So our brains like to know, have the answers, and they want resolution in the end, right? So how do we use any of that, right? We can't just throw pictures of babies and puppies onto our products gratuitously, right? I guess we can, right? The book even says that we can, but it brings to the next point that once things have become expected, right? Like, so if we're throwing just pictures of puppies onto our product, after a while that's going to become expected, and it's not going to work anymore because anything that's expected gets added to the brain's spam filter, right? So the brain likes feelings, so we need a way to create feelings, right? So, I mentioned earlier that the brain is always looking for a way to feel, and our best method, right, would be to create a feeling with our product. So we should always be asking what can we do to make the brain care about this? How can we create the feeling? And one way that the book posits is that it should make it visceral, right? We should try to make things as visceral as possible, getting attention through visceral imagery, examples, or stories. So any way that we can really make things, visceral and dramatic to gain attention and to gain feelings, or to invoke feelings, is ideal. So another way we should try to convince their brain with context, right? So here you can have this photo here from the book on the side. So marketing content is often much better at context than learning content, right? Marketing content is easy to understand, brain friendly, whereas tool content is often dry and boring, right? So not brain friendly. So, sort of what we're saying here is, back to chapters, is that context is also to help with the brain and help keep users' attention and get past the spam filter, right? So On this photo here on the side showing that the marketing contents, which is really compelling and all about context, is helps keep it alive and helps keep the brain active, whereas this tool content is super boring, it's dry, hard to read, and organized. It's all around the functions and it's you eventually get emotional flatline because it's just boring. So it does not help get the users past the user's spam filter at all. So this is a cool game that the author that I thought was useful. It's called, I sort of cut off the top here, sorry. It's called Why, So What, Who Cares, right? So the whole thing is that it's a good way to try to see if your information that you're conveying is attention grabbing, if it's visceral, right? So you play this game. So it goes through, telling you to always close the flu cover before placing the why widget. So you ask why, and they say, oh, because, for XYZ reason. And then they ask, so what? And it's, oh, because you could lose power, right? And then the user asks, who cares? And then we finally get to what's actually compelling, right? And that is, if that happens, the device will either break or catch fire. And it's like, whoa, okay, so that's exciting. So the question is, why didn't we just start with that in the first place, right? And I think it's an interesting idea to play a game like this on the content, right? Because I think it's interesting to sort of get to that end place, right? And see like, oh, okay, so this is what was actually important. And yeah, I mean, why didn't I just lead with this, right? So
what happened? Did Alex suddenly lose sound?
Yes.
I will send him a message in Slack. He probably doesn't know. I wonder if he can hear us.
Probably internet.
Well, the interesting thing is we have this screen, so I assume his thing is
I
projected.
get there.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost it.
Yeah, we lost
Okay.
sound the second you switched to this slide.
So this side, the making content easier.
Yeah. You were just talking about the start with the nuclear option first, and then you switch to this one, and then no sound.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, weird. I'm in presenting mode, so I wonder if my internet dropped. I'm not sure if I don't think it sounds. But okay, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, we always want to choose the nuclear option, right? Just because it's more interesting, right? And we want to lead with what is undoubtedly more interesting, right? So making content easier, right? So main thing is we want a good way to get past the spam filter, right, in general, is just to make our content easier for the brain to pay attention to, right? But along with that, making the content easier is great, but what's also, almost better on top of it is making less content altogether for the brain to pay attention to, right? So, asking questions like, does XYZ really need to be in this manual or in the knowledge base, right? So anything is...
Oh, lost sound again. Yeah, it's slacking. I don't know if it's his internet. Seems like it's a Murphy's Law. As soon as he gets into it, he loses his sound. I might be texting. Now, this is where we'd have the experiencing technical difficulties graphic.
Hey, Alex.
He's lost it. And
Oh.
he's back. He's
Yeah,
back.
it's not down. I just switched it. I got your text. It switched over to video. I dropped the call, so
Yeah, it's
uh,
still stuck. Are you having internet issues? I guess.
it's been terrible. Like less than 1 megabyte a second during peak times during the day. And I live with my family. They don't want the optimum people over. It's like inside the house, and it's been okay. So let me.
I had to get a new whatever combo router, and they won't even come in. They'll stand by the door and tell you stuff. So we actually had to go to Cox and pick it up and install it ourselves. So
Oh, that's funny.
so if your guys are doing the same kind of social distancing, then you'll probably have similar. They'll probably send someone to your house. I'll talk to you through the door, and then you'll
Right.
probably have to go to the cable store in person and get the thing.
Okay. So really quick, I'm just going to turn off all.
Yeah, if you have any other apps open at all, quit everything but
Slack. I'm going to close Slack. And then I have your guys' videos running, so I'm going to go into the settings and close that out as well.
because I have fiber gigabit. I have fiber gigabit, but my wife has trouble with video calls every single day, every single call. So it could be computer software related as well.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen again. Sorry about that. Okay, let me go into. All right, you guys see the presentation mode?
Yeah, just in time.
I'm
So
not sure
you
where
were
I got
trying to
cut off.
talk about this. I don't recall anything because you lost sound twice.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so making content easier, right? So another way, essentially, what this is about is just another way to try to get past the spam filter, right? And another way is, seems sort of obvious, I thought, so at least is just in general to make easier, right? But on top of making content easier, what's even better is making less content for the brain to pay attention to. So that's really the combo you want, right? The less content, less boring content and non-necessary, right? And the content that you do have easier, right? So asking questions like, does XYZ really need to be in a manual or in the knowledge base? Just I think to shorten the amount of content that you have is ideal, right? Which brings us to this other style of learning, right? Which is that we want just-in-time. It's called just-in-time over just-in-case, right? So the brain prefers just-in-time learning over just-in-case. So what just-in-time learning means is, it's essentially we're teaching what the user needs right before they need it, over just-in-case learning, right? So just-in-case is probably the most commonly used style of teaching, right, in education, and it's just terrible for the brain filter, right? So when you're learning things that are just in case that you can't really see the use case for or the value, the brain just thinks it's useless, right? It's just when we're teaching things that are just in time, when we can see what the application would be, when we could see what the application would be, it's much better than just in case, right? We in general want to be able to see everything.
Oh, it's not the programs.
Text him or stack him. It doesn't matter how. You think if he doesn't do full screen, it'd make a difference?
I don't know.
Seems like video should fail before audio fails.
Yeah. Well, is that sort of back? Or is that just bad internet giving us his icon? He texted me back, said the internet actually dropped this time. Oh, and I guess he's sort of back, or is
So slow.
oh, is that your fiber?
Yeah.
That's
I'm Wi-Fi.
so slow. It's still pretty fast.
I'm joking. I guess I'm not sarcastic often.
Mm,
It's on Wi-Fi now.
mm, mm.
Too bad I'm not in Chattanooga.
I'm gonna suggest if his phone internet works, maybe he should use the phone to video broadcast. Of course, it'll be terribly low resolution.
We can at least use the phone for audio, and then maybe send us a link to the slides. Maybe we
Oh
can follow
yeah,
along.
that could work.
Sorry, I've connected to my phone. I'm using my phone as a hotspot now.
Okay, he's back.
So hopefully, sorry about that, everyone. Terrible internet here right now. Okay. Do you guys know? I was like talking for like a minute. Do you get?
You have switched to making it easier for the brain, and I think you're just changing slides, just in case, just in time. Yeah. So we're just talking about just in case is the worst kind.
Okay. Yeah. Just in case is definitely the most commonly used in education. It's terrible for the spam filter, right? Because it's really hard to see the greater context and see how it's going to be used, right? Not everything, of course, can be just-in-time learning, right? You're not interested in your surgeon learning your surgery right before. But mostly, just in case, quite often ends up being like unnecessary knowledge acquisition. And so, if we can focus on just in time as much as we can over just in case, it really helps us as we move past the spam filter, right? So, in our quest to make users, making badass users, right? Our job is to help filter what our users must learn, right? So we need to help our users figure out what the bigger context is, right? We do that by helping them figure out what matters now, and what to ignore, right? So we help make badass users by making an expertise path, right? We sort of lay out what the path is going to be, and help guide them down it, right? And one of the first steps is to narrow down the topics on that expertise path. If this next example it starts off with this image, what this idea of you have a board, right? And we're trying to figure out what knowledge, we have an A column, don't know but need to, B, which is can apply and recall with effort, and C, so we need to sort of figure out what needs to go into that A board, right? What needs to go into that A column. One thing that we can do is to put each time.
Oh no.
NASA, I think it's just a laptop. Because it changed what it's connected to, right?
Yeah, I mean that could be bad, but yeah.
Go team!
Turn the cheerleader off. Who's merging stuff? All right.
I did.
He's there. I think he's there.
Are you guys there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It can't. When did it pop out again?
All right. So yes, we're interrogating just on this. Put each chart on trial. We're going to go apply the 3-question game to each topic.
Yes, yeah. So you're applying the why, so what, who cares on every topic that you're that you're trying to see, if it'll go into that A column. So you essentially want to make it plead for a slot on the A board, right?
I like how their example is actually a veto. When you get to the because, and then you're so not, because I think the previous one was why, and it was a success case where you got to the because your thing will fry if you don't hit there.
Oh yeah,
Right, but this one is actually showing the reverse. You're not, and I think this is equally important. And ultimately, this is like writing. Good writing has only the important stuff, and really like the fifth draft is when you clean out all the crap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good comparison between it and writing. Yeah, I think. I don't think I realized. I don't think I noticed that it was that this one was a case of something that should not be going on the board. But you're right. Yeah, because of historical background. Yeah, not a very good reason to end up on our board.
Yeah.
So another way we can go through this process of on this board, this same idea of on the board, is we can validate usefulness by mapping it to skills, right? So we compiled the cards of initial knowledge and skills, right? And we map the knowledge to a skill, and then verify you possibly can't do that. We verify that you can't possibly do that skill, right, without the corresponding knowledge, right? So we take. We have the cards of the knowledge and skills on here, right? And then we're essentially mapping each one to a skill, right? And making sure that we can't do this skill without this knowledge. And then at the end, whatever unnecessary knowledge you have, you throw that away. And that's, in general, I thought this was an interesting process, and it was and one of the few times in the book where I felt like they really went through like how you might do something, which it was interesting to see them actually going through. We could talk about that at the end, but yeah, it's an interesting way of going through everything and making sure that it'll actually work.
Is that pause silence?
You there?
Yeah.
I'm not. I think my it switched back to my regular internet automatically on my Wi-Fi.
Oh.
I'm not sure why.
All right. So yes,
Okay.
you were talking about how actually going through the steps of how to do something. Whereas, like this is the time that you said, "Oh yeah, you're actually going through all the steps on how you actually do something," or some things are just implied.
Right. Yeah. I thought this was an interesting technique that she was offering in the book. But yeah. So this is just highlighting here the knowledge board. I'm not knowledge cards here. Were things that were more likely to find extraneous knowledge than missing skills, right? It's just sort of showing this between this, right, the actual mapping of the knowledge to the skill board, and that led to the end of the chapter, right? Which is with that positive that we finally have the formula, right? The formula they offered in the beginning of this book, which is making our users badass, right? This graph, but help them actually get better, reduce cognitive leaks, resource leaks, helping them keep wanting to focus on what makes them stop, helping them progress with payoffs, pretty much, I guess this thing here is all of the chapters, right? All just combined into the final thing. But yeah, that was the spam filter chapter. I thought it was interesting chapter, and you know, I wish that there was a little more, you know, and started off with like, oh, you know, like here are the things people care about, like faces and emotion. And I guess the whole concept of this was like you want to elicit the emotional response of them, of like the context of them seeing themselves as like the, you know, where they want to go. But you know, you know, it started off with so many things of like, oh, like you know, people find faces important, and then people find XYZ important. I thought it would sort of give us some insights into like, oh, like how do you implement like finding faces important, and then
Well,
get that.
So when I look at this, and kind of like off of last time's session where we were doing the free discussion, if I want to summarize again, looking at this chart and going, so premise number one is the original premise is we have no, in theory, you have no budget. Like what makes one product succeed versus another, which is related to, hey, you got a product and you want it to be popular. What makes a popular product? And then we come to the conclusion, oh, it's because you have these badass users that are so awesome that they end up advertising the product, whether intentionally or not intentionally, because they're just so good. So then we look at what makes a badass user, and there's this aptitude attitude. It's similar to like how I interview. It's like, okay, you know, what is the attitude? What is the aptitude? The combination to things. This makes them, you know, powerful. So then we get into like, all right, so this is the kind of person you want. How do you make him better? Well, then it talks about, well, how do you learn? And then ultimately, how do you teach? Right? And so really this is kind of like, how do you teach people to become your badass users? So if you look at it, becomes very multidisciplinary. And so now in this chapter with the spam filter removal is we're trying to get into it's still part of how to teach, how to present information. Right. And so that's where we become multidisciplinary, where, and again, like when you're talking about just in case, knowledge is the worst because it doesn't take into account how the brain works. And she's saying, look, we all love the kitties. They stick out, or the strange picture, or the picture just go, what? Catches your attention. You know, that's something like advertising, commercials, and TV. Those guys have mastered this skill because, you know, this is their job, right? Whereas I think, and ultimately this might talk about, since, you know, I don't know how, you know, I have 4 kids at home, distance learning to varying effects. Like my oldest college is doing pretty well, and my youngest school is doing pretty well, and my third kid teachers are probably barely doing anything.
Right.
But it goes back to how do you teach, and so and related to this one, like when I started to speak at the conferences, and you see the good presenters, they hooked on to that. How do you catch people's eyes? Attention, you know, pictures, emotion, right? You learn, okay. I think for me as an engineer, once I realized that was the game. The game is when you're making a presentation, you feel as an engineer, I want to put all these important slides, and the power of the content won't be enough to win them, but it's not true. Right? You put too much details, they fall asleep, they can't manage it, whatever. So this ability to catch their attention, which, you know, I know all of us tech presenters learn from Dick Hart and Lawrence Lessig, and that quick style Lessig style that I do. That's one way to do it. It's not the only way, but a lot of like the pictures and the funny and the humor, and everyone has a different style. But just going to multidisciplinarily, how do I get someone to pay attention to me? Right? And sometimes the right topic and the right passion's enough. But I think if you're looking across the board, you need little tricks. You got to get rid of the extraneous information. And then if you can, let's say I distilled our product down to 5 bullets, but if the 5 bullets are really long and boring, it's still hard for them. Or maybe these are essential, but you don't know why. Why do I need this information? Right? And so she touches briefly upon each one, but it's kind of like each one is really a book on its own.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly.
You know, and so it's like, So I think across the book, it's if we realize how much information she's tackling, it's a lot of stuff. She's just kind of cutting this little path and then giving you teasers. And a couple of times she refers to other books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh well, I think, like, what could have made this better if we had a project from the ground that we went through each step.
That would have been it. Yeah, right. Something that you could apply it to. Yeah, I don't
You
know.
know, well, what sometimes it's necessary just seeing how it's applied. That's kind of like
Mhm.
Kent Beck's TDD book. The first 2/3 of it is him doing. So it had something to do with money. He went through some use case and he TDDs all the way through, and so he gives you this example, and it's one of those things. It's back to the teaching thing. If you can't go through it, if you can't read it all, you don't get the full knowledge. But it's all those things that you were talking about. I wish you went all the way through it. Kent Beck goes all the way through a fairly, a non-trivial example over a bunch of chapters.
Yeah,
And he shows you how he does it, and importantly, he makes some mistakes and shows you how he rescues himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that was huge. If you basically, the best way to get advantage of that book is to code along with it.
Right.
To do it, to see the exercises, obviously, and then like per the way I recommend like learning Rails, you probably code along with it 2 or 3 times. The third time you know exactly what's going on. The first time you're going through the motion, the second time things look familiar, the third time you know what's going on, and that's when you actually know the subject. So
Right.
arguably, but this book would be much thicker. But if we had a hypothetical project with the hypothetical context, with the IDing of what would make these guys. I mean, the example we used a lot of things. Procreate, right? That was the example I had the most. Well, actually, I picked it because we had a real life proof of awesomeness kind of thing for that one. But like maybe a single ongoing example as we went through each chapter.
Right.
What's the context? Okay, what context is artist, and then some ad copy, and then what's the 5 essential features of Procreate, and then we could but the Procreate manual is like a telephone book, yes, but these sections are that thing. And then over here we could show a book all this stuff, and then printing down to the 5 things, and then somehow making those instructions memorable and emotion and all that stuff.
Right.
That could be our addendum. We could do the project, apply her book, and then write a second book. This is the Badass Users Applied book.
Applied. Yeah, I like that. That's a cool idea.
There's for refactoring. There's a refactoring workbook that can't see Bill Wake, I believe. Bill Wake wrote. So refactoring the book. It's like design patterns book. It's just a bunch of their patterns and smells.
Mm-hmm.
And the refactoring workbook is this book of comparable length that's just exercises to go and exercise those things. So, reading the book is one thing, but, you don't learn these things, so you do them. So the workbook is one. So arguably, the Badass workbook might be something useful for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's because the concepts are so interesting, right? And I think it's like, I definitely agree that having something to apply might just like, I found for most of this book at the end of the chapters, I was always like, I guess what you're saying is right. She gives you enough to like scrape the surface and get, interested, which is maybe sort of what this chapter is about, right? She maybe this was all on purpose. She didn't want to give too much to have our spam filters engaged. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, generally, I was always hoping for more in detail examples. I don't know. But yeah, that's why I think that idea is interesting. The applied making Badass Making Users Awesome book would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think she succeeds in intriguing you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now we just got to follow up, and that's per op sector and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Any other discussion? So I know we got a couple different people than normal. Sam joined us after a little thingy, and I say Osman's been responding. I think RSVPing to the meetup for a while, and he actually joined. So
Hey,
please welcome, and this is the part where I feel is the best, is when we discuss. So if you guys have any questions, insights, and I know you guys missed the bulk of this book, but questions, comments, all welcome. Otherwise, got nothing to say. So we have the prologue. How long? The prologue's not very long, right?
I think it's like, yeah, that's why I got confused. Both, I think it's a little shorter than this chapter, maybe like 4 pages.
Yeah. So we should wrap. We'll wrap that one up, I guess, next time. We'll do the prologue and final discussion. You want to remember the name of the book I thought we were going to do next? It was book by Dave Kim. What was it? It's not Renault. It's not the N3. Shape Up. Yes. Shape Up was the one. I go, stop running in circles and shift work that matter. Okay, so we'll wrap up. I'm going to go, what should I change? I'll go ship. I'll screen share my book if the new guys want to discuss. I think the book we're going to pick is all right. I'm sharing, right? So we should see. Shape Up. Start running in circles and ship work that matters. For product development teams who struggle to ship, full of eye-opening insights, will help you break free of best practices that aren't working, thinking about the right problem, start shipping meaningful products. And you hit this page, you can download it for free. So that would be useful. I should go reach out to Ryan Singer, who is I did get to sit with him at, I want to say, RailsConf 06, 07. Very insightful guy. He's their UI guy, their UI mastermind. Of course they have their usual blah blah blah. But in general, not everyone can work the way they do, but they're very functional based, right? They don't want to do stuff that doesn't help them. They work remote, they cut out meetings, they're really about trying to be productive and effective. Ryan Singer really tries to get in. As you can sort of see this picture that he's got, what is question mark here, is empty, and then filling out parts. He came up with this other way of like UI diagramming years ago that was very interesting, and it was really focused. Something they do that's different is they actually jump right to HTML almost immediately, but him as the UI guy, and part of what, instead of having a detailed draw picture, they jump quickly because they realize quicker what's possible. I don't think we stray so far from what's possible as we used to a long time ago, but that's useful. I'm going to look through the chapters here. Forward, acknowledgements, principle to shaping. I think that picture goes, set boundaries, find the elements, risk and rabbit holes, write the pitch. Betting, bets not backlogs, bet 6 weeks. So this is how they break up. They're going to depart a bit from traditional Scrum Agile by not having a backlog. Building hand over responsibility, get one piece done. This is very typical to how BDD likes to build stuff. It's an Agile thing, map to scope, show progress, decide when to stop, move on. How to implement this in their tool. That's a little, actually, that's kind of badass user because it ties back to the tool they sell. So here's this book. Actually, that's kind of good because the bigger context is how do you make product? How do you make a kick-ass product? Right? And so if we can do that, and that's why we might want to use their tool. So this might convince us, hey, we should use their tool because it's really good. Just to your size. I think it's always important for all processes. It's got to fit your team. As much as I admire the original extreme programming, very few teams can do it that way. How to begin using about Delta. So there you go. Book is free. I'll take a quick teaser look in the pages. So that's that original picture. You can sort of see the shaping thing he's talking about. We don't know. It's kind of blank. picking out parts, checking. I see some stuff is checking, some isn't. Growing pain, 6-week cycle. There's a larger cycle than shaping the work. That would be like the epic level. Wireframes are too concrete, words are too abstract. There's some ideas, so I kind of like that one. Case study, the dot grid calendars, rough, solve, bundle, who shaves. Setting the appetite, I like that word. I don't know what it means here. Fixed time, variable scope. Good relative, raw ideas. Okay, case study. It looks like that thing I was talking about for Badass. We got the calendar twice now. So maybe he's doing exactly what I said should happen in Badass. Watch out for grab bag, boundaries in place, find the elements, moving the right speed, breadboarding. So this is fat marker sketches, elements you output, room for designers, not deliverable yet, no conveyor belt, risk and rabbit holes, difficult risks. Look at rabbit holes, case study, patching a hole. I don't know if this is back the other one, but there's a case study for each. So I think that was similar. The design patterns book kind of did that. Right, they had more case studies. Declare out of bounds, cut back, present to technical expert, de-risk, and ready to write up. Wow, so they do all this before they have to pitch. Problem, appetite, solution. I like those words. It's a little different than what I'm used to. With appetite having a connotation. Problem, solution, I get. Help them see it, embedded, annotated fat marker sketches, talked about that, rabbit holes. So we're clearly combining the previous chapters, no-goes, example 30%, how to get in base camp, betting. All right, so now we're going to build best not backlogs. Got 6 weeks, cycle, cool down team, betting table, okay, his terminology. What about bugs, like clean problems? Appetite, solution attractives, the right time. Building, hand of responsibility, projects not tasked, that means deployed. You understand that one. Getting oriented, imagine versus discover, one piece done, one slice, that's very BDD. Map the scopes, organized by structure, not person, scope, map, language, case studies, again. Scope, layer, whispers, nice that show progress. This part hopefully makes Terry happy. Work is like a hill, scopes on the hill, styles what asking, no one says I don't know. I feel our recent talk about the mock-up not having enough information. I don't know if there's a solution to that one, but that seems like a recent problem with experience that might be useful. Decide when to stop, compare to baseline, limited motivation trade-off, scope goes like grass, we know about that. Cutting scope isn't lowering quality, scope hammering QAs is up for the edges. One extended project, and then we wrap up. Moving on, debt-free, key concepts. Oh, and the appendices. How to use your tool, which we can apply to other tools. How to adjust to your thing. All right, so there you go. I think that unless I didn't hear any oppositions to this one, I pitched it last, so I think this is the next book, and who knows? Maybe it's a roadmap for an ops sector project. All right, so that's what we got. Any comments, questions? Sam, anything for this book? See, everyone's muted, so. All right, I guess with no comments, that's it. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to wrap up the other book. Maybe I'll do another preview of this. Yeah, thanks for coming, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
All righty.